to the Manchester Science Festival!
And specifically welcome to our Science Slam. Go woo!
That's a woo, actually.
So, I guess we should probably tell everybody what we did, what we have done, what we have asked our poets and scientists to do this evening.
Okay, yeah, so basically what we did was we decided to get 5 of the finest scientific minds in the Greater Manchester area. Sadly, they were all busy, so it was incredibly harsh. We decided to get 5 of the scientific greatest minds in the Manchester area and pair them up with 5 amazing poets from Manchester as well, put them in a room together, see what happened, and then they've basically come up with 5 performance pieces this evening that they're going to share with you for your viewing and oral pleasure. So up next we have Dr. Joe Browse, a climate scientist from the University of Leeds, and
Louise Fazacali, an incredible poet. So let's give it up for our next poet scientist.
This is not a sonnet, I lied. Don't worry. Okay, should we keep on going? Yeah.
I have one job, I'm sorry.
My third sonnet, yes, pay attention class, yeah. Politicians talking big business today, politicians talking science today, but scientists can't talk politics today. You're supposed to be cold and objective. And yes, men and women are allowed to care, but somehow girls are not supposed to measure, count or stir. I can't believe I still have to say things like this. But simply gaze in delight at the beauty of Arctic haze and northern lights, or whisper behind hands that do not fan the flames of fight. And scientists are not allowed to speak about the politics of cartography. Canada renamed the Northwest Passage the Canadian Northwest Passage. Denmark denying Indigenous rights to the Inuits of Greenland, Russian military bases, British outposts claiming empty spaces. And scientists are not allowed to speak, not even on Twitter. All my views are my own and not that of my employer. And scientists are not allowed to speak about the money-making industry of climate change, because if you're not impartial, how can we believe your so-called scientific claims? Who's funding this study, anyway? And simply put, employ writers to talk about all of that, because there's something far safer about fiction over fact. Thank you.
Open beta, you may have heard it in terms of gaming or software development. Basically, it's at the point where the software is nearly ready to go. Yeah, really interesting, fascinating poetry. When software is really ready to go, it's sent out to the general public, and they test it out and give feedback to the authors of that software. So it's kind of a test, open beta. Now, art should work like that as well. You can't just write a poem and assume it's the best poem that's ever been written. Though obviously, that's how some poets do the work. True. So I think you've got to test art as much as you've got to test software, make sure it works for people. So with that in mind, this poem is actually in open beta, so any feedback you can give me at the end will be most appreciated. Let's have the soundtrack. Nice and loud. Bit loud. This poem isn't done yet, but I thought it might be useful to test it out, put it in front of people, get some feedback about what's working, what's not working, that sort of thing. What people might want to see in future versions of this poem. Do you like the floral imagery? Let us know. Warning, this is not a review copy of the poem. This is very much a work in progress. We hope to release a final version soon, but even that will be subject to patches and updates. It's impossible to account for every little detail in a poem like this, in any poem, I suppose, for that matter. Do you like the commas in that last line? Let us know. Sorry for any bugs and freeze-ups that you encounter, but that's the nature of gelatinous warehouse poem. Is the narrative strong enough? Let us know. Thanks for your feedback from the alpha version. A list of things changed since then. Removed references to Frank O'Hara, fixed infinite recursion at the start, changed comments to feedback, AI logarithms fixed as AI became self-aware over time. Zombies no longer walk through walls, patched holes in metaphors, added verbs. Let us know. Some bugs may become features of the poem in the future if they enhance your experience of the poem, or are critically praised as aesthetically beautiful. Enjoy the glitches while they last. They ultimately may be more interesting than the final poem. This line is in capitals and I don't know how to fix it yet! Did we develop the central character fully? Let us know. Your read-through of the poem is important to us. It saves us having to find problems with it ourselves. So do send us an email with any issues on this poem, any thoughts that you may have. Let us know. Save your progress through this poem regularly. In this version, crashes are common, so don't worry if it suddenly...
I'm ready! So when you hear the word carbon, not before or after, one molecule per carbon. Let's do it!
Electricity sparks spring from fossil fuels. Power plants, carbon. Summer sun swelters as oceans acidify. Life's lost to carbon. Support CCS. Raise the funds to see this full. Don't ignore carbon.
Yes! I'm averaging a 1 per haiku. This is the last one. I'm going to at least double my score.
This is the winter of our chance to choose to change. Our final seasons rearranged by carbon.
Yes! Thank you very much!
So there's this absolutely amazing study that was done by some scientists down in Exeter that looked at a bunch of bullfinches. Now bullfinches are really interesting creatures. They're birds, and basically they're similar to humans insofar as they are monogamous, if humans are monogamous, and they raise their young together. So they'll pick somebody and they'll raise their young together in one go. And what this scientific study did was it got 30 bullfinches and it allowed them to find 15 males, 15 females, and it allowed them to find their mates. And then, after they found the people that they wanted to mate with, they let one set of pairs go off, and the other set of pairs they split up and forced to go with another set of mates in quite a horrific scientific experiment. But what was really interesting was that the pairs that were allowed to stay with the mates that they'd chosen were actually found to be more sexually proactive and also to have young that survived longer through infancy. So basically this study is a way of looking at whether or not evolution actually has its roots in love. And so this poem that I've written is about that, and it's called Does Evolution Have Its Roots in Love? Why do we place such emphasis on love? Should we not just go forth and multiply? Instead of that person sent from above, could we not mate with any girl or guy? The zebrafinch will choose a mate for life, raising their young as an effective team, but an experiment split cock from wife. and made them mate with others from this seam. The pairs that had free choice to mate were found to have over a third a better rate of reproductive efforts that were sound than those who were forcibly shown a mate. Could this study of finches show thereof that evolution has its roots in love? Thank you.
So imagine a game of poker.
5 or so players. It's a dingy room. Some of them are smoking.
They're hiding their disappointment, thrill of winning, of coming out on top at last. Their suspicion of each other, you would think, yet there is no mask sufficient.
Surprise or shock. 1, 2, 5B, 26. Outer brows go up. Inner brows go up. Lips part. Some trace of this remains.
An ant's nest under the skin, the muscles working away, ceaseless even in your sleep.
A creased brow. Pull in on yourself. Untiring. Your eyes know when to speak for you when you just don't have the words quite yet. Haven't spun your thoughts into that finer thread. Conversation. You are a child skating on ice. Your toe skids and you nearly fall down. We don't have nearly the amount of control we think we have.
Everything you thought you hid in the back of your head twitches in your eye, jerks your mouth downwards. Unbidden at the wave of the bad news breaking over you, your face twists, though you wrestle it on the customary expression of a suppressed smile, an inappropriate smile.
You push your lower lip up from the chin, force the corners of your mouth down. In a poem about this kind of thing, a man said once, the smile was too vast, it outflanked all. It was so tiny, it slipped between the atoms. That's exactly how it is. You can't escape it.
Existing moment to moment, the micro-expression is consigned to the past, gone as soon as it arrives. It's hard to say what it could have meant.
To the naked eye it's a flash. It's a bolt of lightning that leaves no trace but a little scorching, a little shadow that swiftly fades.
Something meaningful that was once meaningless, a cipher. At one level, though we process it.
We get a sense of how the friend we're sat with feels, beyond anything they have to say about it. I'm fine stands in contrast to the sudden glower that leaves its brand embedded somewhere in our brains.
Like staring into bright lights and seeing them when you close your eyes. We know they're not fine somehow, but we don't know why.
In slow motion, it's so much easier.
So I'm Becca and this is Ben, and this piece is called, you're right, this piece is called Human Laser Duality, and we wrote it together, so some of this is found from Ben's writing and some of it's me. Imagine light as waves.
Imagine this, physicist, perceptions of me bone deep, like bends as it moves.
Victor bends to a monster.
My heart a lamp within me. I can't shake this feeling that I will be found out soon.
Coherent light.
Cancels out to nothing. How does this exist? You have to exist.
You have to exist, a particle at a time. You are knee-deep in our dreams of lasers. Can you show me concentrated light when the scatter greets my eyes, blind spots, tunnel vision? You have to bleed. The light we see reaches us at different speeds. Conquer your inner imposter, for soon you will be discovered.
Soon I will be discovered. Will charge the world with a monster's promise. Electric pump, How does this matter? How light enjoys a sunset with matter. Light promotes electrons. No promotion for the scientist. Victor crawls alone in the dark. No eureka. Trying to understand how waves break. Centuries on, we could be fundamental as particles.
We are as fundamental as particles. A laser is a perfectly still ray of light. Stand still in the echo chamber. See time sweep up around you. You travel to a small, nameless German town where leaders adorn the walls. There, you study the properties of matter. Watch the gap in the energy fields with a man's eye. We confuse the scientist with the creation. Soon, you'll stand to one side, watch the human race race on without you, wait to be found out as a fraud. But time will discover you. 9 to 5, a steady hand and a steady wage. All the light we see reaches us at different delays. The atmosphere soaks up old gamma from our reckless heydays. We try to separate the money from our mistakes. We can spin gold in laboratories. Frankenstein was the scientist's name, not the monsters.
Frankenstein was the scientist's name, not the monster's. He remained demon-faced, carrying our blame, a world where success skates on thick ice. Lasers couldn't melt this frozen lake. Science is a bit shit sometimes. No equilibrium, our balance fragile. Only the focus of the contract's end, excitation, that's bending at the interface, but I'm not the solution. It makes sense and then it doesn't. Describe each person as a wave while I am crashing. Become my own quantum state. Some is visible, some is invisible. The textbooks reiterate what is left. Like staring at two answers. How do you align beams of light when you are blind? You cannot hold both in your mind's eye.
When you cannot hold both solutions in your mind's eye, you might be a human, a car on tram tracks, hoping for a humane aim. Visibility lights up your cortex, cat's eyes on a motorway. You nearly swerve and crash, like isolating a scientist alone in a lab and hope they'll become a ray of light, able to travel infinitely into forever, never losing energy. We can make it alone. Light re-emits as heat. Photo excite, fire me up, as if I were a laser.
I am a laser, a perfectly still ray of light. Convince me.
That this matters. An interaction with two states.
A heterostructure.
We'll set up a table full of mirrors, make eye contact within the glass.
Chasing down light so strong I've never seen.
It burns.
A wave function of a person.
We
are the most efficient we've ever been.
Thank you.
We have the wonderful Dr. Timothy Bolton treading the fine line at the University of Bolton. There is a University of Bolton.
And we have the incredible poet Kieran King, who runs evidently in Salford. There is a poetry night in Salford. And it's a bloody great poetry night as well. All right, so let's give it up for our infinite poetry and science. Give it up for our last parents.
So Tim has taken some of my old poetry and some of your work and meshed them together to make part gibberish, part better than anything that I've written. And it's awesome.
Yeah, so this was really geeky, and I wrote, there's a piece of mathematical code that actually created this poem. This is a scientific poem that's been created out of your poetry and my work. So the idea here is that you guys are now going to be quantum measurers, because you are going to act in a superposition of states whereby you're either watching us, or listening to us, or watching that, or doing one or the other, or none of them. But the unique thing is that everyone is going to have their own interpretation of what's going on, because some of you might be watching that at different times with other people, so some of you will get different ideas about what the hell we're talking about, or we could all leave not knowing a single bloody thing. But the idea about why using pi, because pi is very special. Who loves pi? Well, pi is very special because it's an irrational number. So that means it's got infinite decimals of expansion, so infinite in there. But it's an irrational number, and so the number of irrational numbers, there's an infinite number of them, but the infinity of irrational numbers is bigger than the infinity of decimal points. That's right, infinities come in different sizes, some are bigger than the other. Mind blown. And shall we begin?
Well, yeah, this, so we're going to do that at the same time as doing one about your alternative worlds thing. Yes, let's see how it goes. An infinite number of monkeys at an infinite number of typewriters over an infinite number of time would write Shakespeare.
In a larger infinity?
They would write all the great works of fiction.
In a larger infinity still?
They would write mostly gibberish. I relate to the monkeys jabbing at the keys of a typewriter hoping for greatness.
In an infinite number of worlds, there are an infinite number of coin flips, an infinite number of dice rolls, an infinite number of choices.
In an infinite number of worlds, dinosaurs still roam the earth and are locally sourced, served with a rocket and balsamic glaze.
In an infinite number of worlds, we never left our caves. In an infinite number of realities,
there are an infinite number of reality TV shows.
Britain's got mediocrity.
I'm a nobody. Get me in there.
The Cox Factor.
In an infinite number of worlds, Katie Hopkins isn't a dick.
In an infinite number of worlds, there are an infinite number of coin flips, an infinite number of dice rolls, an infinite number of choices. Every coin flip has led me here.
In an infinite number of worlds, I grew up to be a mathematician. In an infinite number of worlds, I am gay and disowned. In an infinite number of worlds, I am a refugee desperately trying to flee persecution through the Channel Tunnel for a better life in France.
In an infinite number of worlds, there are an infinite number of coin flips, an infinite number of dice rolls, an infinite number of choices.
In an infinite number of worlds, there are an infinite number of yous and an infinite number of shoes to walk in.
In an infinite number of worlds, there are an infinite number of words. Imagine that dictionary. An infictionary.
This poem would have an infinite number of stanzas and go on forever. But we've got a time limit.
Time working on our science slam, putting poets and scientists together to collaborate and come up with some material. And yeah, it couldn't have gone better really. Like, the poets and scientists get on incredibly well. They both work together to come up with something really different and interesting. Yeah, I'm incredibly impressed with the work they put on actually. For a first time, you're always kind of worried about how it's going to go. It's a bit of an experiment, but I think this experiment is a huge success. I'm really happy, really pleased.
Whose idea was this to collaborate between scientists and poets?
So, Dr. Sam Illingworth, I met in Manchester, and he's a poet as well. And I'm a poet who likes to write about science. So we kind of had a meeting, we had a chat about how we can bring the disciplines together a little bit more. And we had this idea of a science slam. And originally it was going to be what a slam is, which is, you know, poets and scientists doing 3 minutes of material and having scores at the end, and the highest score wins. But as we kind of chatted more, we realised that kind of wasn't the best way to do it, actually, putting science and poetry against each other. So we actually decided to get them to collaborate.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sam Illingworth. I'm a lecturer in science communication at Manchester Metropolitan University. And this evening, with the wonderful poet Dan Simpson, MA, we put on a showcase called Science Slam as part of the Manchester Science Festival, in which we paired up 5 poets and 5 scientists. They performed amazingly, they had genuine collaborations. It wasn't the poetry of science, it wasn't the science of poetry, it was genuinely something interdisciplinary, and it was amazing. I loved it, the audience seemed to have loved it, and I feel very privileged to have worked with such an incredible group of people. Thank you very much.